sheet after sheet of dead and wounded and missing were in day after day, and one almost looked the first thing to see the papers and see if there was anyone there whom one knew. It was a very sad time because the girls had lost their brothers, the boys had lost their older brothers too, and everywhere there was a feeling of great sadness, and somehow the high hopes that we had had at the beginning seemed dashed.
Streets went into mourning. Curtains were drawn at window after window in the city of Sheffield. In other cities, the story was the same. Slowly, the picture began to emerge for the nation to see, if it wished. In the Times, on July the 3rd, the names of 143 fallen officers and 914 soldiers appeared. On the 24th, there were 600 officers and 5,500 soldiers. On August the 21st, the names took up 5 full columns. On the 31st, about the same again. Thoughtful men grew uneasy. The historian F.S. Oliver received a letter from his brother.
The present battle seems the very crudest and most unscientific and uninspired kind of senseless pandemonium. It doesn't seem to be men against men, but lead and iron against flesh. The lead and iron are of course bound to win, but as both sides have lead and iron, the destruction of the flesh seems to have no meaning.
The same doubts penetrated through to government circles. On July the 29th, the CIGS, Sir William Robertson, reported to Haig,
"The powers that be are beginning to get a little uneasy in regard to the situation. The casualties are mounting up, and they're wondering whether we are likely to get a proper return for them. What's troubling them is the probability that we may soon have to face a bill of 200,000 to 300,000 casualties with no very great gains."
Haig replied,
"The principle on which we should continue to act is clear. Under no circumstances would it be possible to relax our efforts in this battle without prejudicing, probably fatally, the offensive of our allies and their hopes of victory. We must, and we can, maintain our offensive."
August was the ding-dong month. In Galicia, in Italy, at Verdun, everyone was fighting. Everyone must continue to fight. Steadily, day by day, the Somme was transforming itself into what the Germans called the material battle. A battle of lead and iron against flesh, in which the destruction of the flesh seemed to lose all meaning. An officer wrote,
"A man seemed to lose his identity as an individual. Divisions were swallowed up in corps and armies, and from this point of the war one seemed no longer to regard death as individual. Reinforcements would arrive, one never knew their names, they disappeared so quickly through the dressing stations or to swell the number of the little wooden crosses. The individual man was gone."
This was a battle which the Germans were conscious of not winning. Their industry had done marvels throughout the war. Their armies were admirably equipped and continued to be so. But there was a limit. Now, as British production backed by American industrial power began to approach a zenith, and every front clamored for arms and men, the Germans suffered a sense of helplessness.
The loss of ground was of no strategic importance, but the course of the fighting must not be measured by this. The great losses in men, the heavy expenditure of material, ate only too deep into the strength of the German army. The mighty material superiority of the enemy did not fail to have its psychological effect upon the German soldier.
General von Gallwitz, now commanding the Somme front, issued an order of the day at the beginning of August.
The decisive battle of the war is now being fought on the fields of the Somme. It must be impressed on every officer and man up to the front line that the fate of our country is at stake in this battle. By ceaseless vigilance and self-sacrificing courage, the enemy must be prevented from gaining another inch of ground. His attacks must break against a wall of German breasts.
Yet, inch by inch, the Germans were driven back. The new armies were gaining experience, slowly. By the end of August, British losses had reached 196,000 men. The French had lost over 70,000. But the war was going seriously for Germany. On August the 27th, Romania joined the Allies. On August the 28th, General Erich von Falkenhayn, the German Chief of Staff, was dismissed. His 1916 strategy had failed. Verdun had held, and now the French were passing to the counter-offensive there. On the Somme, the fate he had predicted for France was happening to Germany. She was bleeding to death. Field Marshal von Hindenburg and his staff officer Erich Ludendorff took over from Falkenhayn. They did not admire the conditions they found in the West. Hindenburg wrote,
I will not hesitate to admit that it was only now that I fully realized all that the Western armies had done hitherto. What a thankless task it was for commanders and troops on whom pure defense was imposed, and who had to renounce the vision of tangible victory.
They were making progress, these men of Britain's new armies. Ammunition improved, gunnery techniques improved. The infantry were discovering the tactics of the wearing-out battle. Brusilov's wonderful offensive was reaching its last spasms of energy. Romania had come in. The Italians were preparing their main effort of the year. One more thrust by the British and French together on the Somme might, who knows, settle the account. On August the 28th, Joffre told Haig,
A great battle of the whole coalition is going to begin in the first weeks of September.
On August the 31st, British GHQ issued an order stating,
The CNC has decided that the attack projected for the middle of September is to be planned as a decisive operation, and all preparations made accordingly.
a decisive operation to knock Germany out of the war. Every one of the Allies was on the march. There could be no holding back of anything. And now the material battle was about to bring something special into the British armory. Already the British armies on the Somme were using more than 500 more guns than they had in July, despite battle losses. But there was something else as well.
But anyway, one day we were in the wagon line, quite a few years, and somebody came along and said, oh, the war's finished. Oh, well, just go down about half a mile down the road and look in the field there, you'll see. Won't tell us why. Anyway, we went down, and quite a crowd there. And there are tanks, things we'd never seen or heard of.
As far back as the autumn of 1914, all through the vain battles of 1915, now again in the holocausts of 1916, the combination of barbed wire, machine guns, and artillery had proved fatal to the human spirit and to the highest endeavor. Now, at last, after 18 months of research and experiment,